Hey, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, I'm speaking with Habiba Zaman. Has a master's degree in professional counseling, specializing in trauma. She is the therapist, certified life coach, author, and owner of North Star of Georgia Counseling. She has 15 years of experience working in the counseling field, including counseling advocacy, guidance and education. She believes that as a person becomes more aware of their fears, perceptions, desires, and strengths, they can make successful life changes. She is the author of 25 publications and 8 books, many of which have reached the Amazon bestseller list and have won international recognition and awards. She's going to be talking to us today about lost identity, identifying your truths, and setting boundaries. Hi, Habiba, and welcome.
Hi there. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
So I am a mental health therapist and I'm an author as well. Recently added life coach to that because, why not? How I got here, it's a convoluted story. It's a long story, as with, I guess, everyone's stories, right? To be completely frank with you, I decided to be a therapist when I was in 8th grade. I know not very many people get to say that with such, conviction. It was because of my school therapist, school counselor, Mrs. Bunch. She's incredible human being. I worked very, very hard to be invisible. And leading up to that, I had a lot of life challenges. In 8th grade, how old are you? 12, 13. So life is tumultuous anyways, but a lot of other things had happened and I was just not in a very good place. And Mrs. Bunch just walked up to me as I was going to class, grabbed me, pulled me out of line. Can't do things like that anymore, but you could back then. And she just stood there. And I was looking at her like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? I didn't do anything. What's happening? Why is this happening? And I was frightened because, what happened? I had never spoken to her before. We knew she was the school counselor. We knew of her, but I hadn't met with her or anything. And she took a moment and got close to my face and tucked my hair behind my ears and said, whatever it is won't matter in 5 years.
Wow.
And then walked away. And I was standing there like, what just happened? I had worked so hard to be invisible and for so long that, for someone to see through me like that, someone who didn't know me, it felt like a superpower. And I knew that I wanted that superpower. I wanted to be able to give someone what she gave me that day. And that was hope. I hadn't had hope for a very long time. And I was like, okay. And so since then, that's kind of been the trajectory. That's what I wanted to do. And that's what I became.
I love it. To know at such a young age that basically is your calling.
Mm-hmm.
And to go with it, to go for it and not get lost on the path.
Right.
I
was lucky, definitely, that it did fall in line with who I was and who I am. I am an empath. I love helping people. I find comfort. That's a weird thing to say, but I do feel comfort when I'm able to provide comfort to someone else for their suffering and understanding of where they've been and, where they're wanting to go. And I love being part of that journey. So it worked out. What do you know?
It's amazing. I love it.
Thank you. So that's how I became a therapist, and everything else that's come since then. It's just been an extension of that.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about some of the books you have.
My first book that I wrote with my colleague and dear friend, Shalon Irving, is called Beautifully Bare, Undeniably You. And it's about just what the title says, learning who you are, what your identity is, how you define yourself instead of, what you feel like you should be and where you should be in life, and identifying what that looks like for you so that you can start writing your own narrative instead of living out the one someone else wrote for you. Beautiful. So that was that one. It's a very powerful book, not just because I wrote it and I'm biased, but it is. We have we follow it from beginning to end, just like I would in therapy. So we go through the same stages as much as you can with a self-help book, right? Instead of being in front of someone. And we follow the process and the patterns and the techniques. It's all in there. But then each section also has a vignette written from one of our perspectives of the same place in life that we've been at, the experiencing the same thing. And so it's like looking into somebody's diary. It's very vulnerable. It's very icky. But it's written that way. So, whoever's reading it, they can feel like they're not alone. They're not the only person that's going through that somebody else has. And not only did we survive it, but we've thrived. So that's that one. I have a couple of more on being a mommy. I'm a single mom of 2 boys, my babies, who are not babies at all, but they're my babies. And we have, you've got this mama, you've got this mama too, you've got this boss mama, and being mama. So I'm a co-author in all of those. And we have, I don't know if you remember it, but Chicken Soup for the Soul. So it's kind of like that. It's the little short stories of all of these different perspectives. So you have, all ranges of motherhood and all ranges of life. And we all kind of get together and share our love and our struggles and a very real look at what mothering can be and not the glorified, romanticized version. And then, they're all in the realm of self-help, basically. We have Dear Love, and then we have Dear Time. So Dear Love is, finding love, same thing, co-authored with different voices and different perspectives. And Dear Time is kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where, it challenges this preconceived notion of where you should be in life and who you should be. And by this age and by this time, I should have done blank, blank, blank. So we challenge all of that throughout the book. It's beautiful. It's very, very powerful.
Love it. Love it. So talk to us about that lost identity.
Oh, goodness. One of the things I believe society teaches us is when you love someone, you love them with everything that you have, right? You're there for them, you complete them, and they complete you. And, you two become one, and all of these other romanticized, very romantic ideals of love. And I think that's one of the most damaging things that we can teach. And we do that from a young age, right? We see it in the romance novels, we see it in Disney movies, we see it in TV shows, you name it. It's always there. But it strips of us of who we are as people, who we are as individuals, what makes us uniquely beautiful, right? And I think when we fall into these relationships, when we're living our lives to please someone else, and we do that at the expense of ourselves, over time, you no longer know who you are anymore. What life is supposed to mean for you, what you believe in necessarily, and what you want to fight for. And especially being in a relationship with a narcissist, I believe that's kind of the goal, that's what they go for. Your sense of identity is completely gone, and your identity becomes who they want you to be. And this takes so much time, and it's not always so obvious. Covert narcissism is the hardest thing, I believe, to identify and even see what's happening. And by the time you realize, wait, something's wrong, something's off, you've lost so much of yourself. Little pieces, little bits have been chipped away. Until one day you look back and you're like, wow, I don't even know who I am anymore. So
yes, I agree so much with that. I spent almost 23 years in 2 separate narcissistic relationships. Ex number 1 was a really good covert narcissist. And, he wasn't the one that, ever raised a hand, never called me a name, but boy, did he ever have a way of talking down to me in a way that didn't sound like it was talking down to me.
right.
It's the underhanded, backhanded comments that don't come off that way. It's the, making you believe that your friends aren't your friends, your family is awful, the whole, like you said, chipping away, the whole slowness of it, that you don't even realize that you start believing the things that they're telling you and,
Right.
you know, yeah. So what,
Or even hiding behind the jokes.
right, right.
Oh, I was just kidding. I didn't mean that. What do you, don't be so sensitive.
Yes.
And then you let
Exactly.
things go and you let things slide because you don't want to be too sensitive. And you're
Exa-
slowly rearranging who you are to fit the mold so that you can be loved, right? So you can be enough.
Yes, exactly. So do you have some of the red flags or things that people could notice when that starts to happen?
Yes. So, you know, with overt narcissism, I mean, you see it coming from a mile away and you're like, yeah, no, thank you. Not interested. Those are easier to avoid. The covert narcissism, that's the ones where I think it's harder to notice. And the easiest way to recognize that you're dealing with a narcissist, and of course, narcissism is a spectrum, right? Everything is a spectrum. No one is this one box that we all fit into. And so definitions of this narcissism is going to be manifested in many, many different ways. So just because they don't fit all of the criteria doesn't mean that that's still not what you're dealing with. But the top one is typically, my clients crack up when I say this, but it's true. That's just what I found. A narcissist is never the villain. They're always the victim or they're always the victor, but they're never the villain. And so if you listen to their stories, especially when you're first getting to know them and they're all charming and they're amazing and, they're everything you could have ever hoped for. We sometimes kind of hand them what we're looking for on a silver platter. I know I have. Where I'm like, this is what I'm looking for in a partner. And they're like, okay, mental checklist. I will be everything that you say you want and that you need in a partner. Until you're so enamored with this person, you trust them with everything you have and you believe everything that they say because they've been everything you've ever hoped for. And then one day, you're like, what happened? Where is the person I fell in love with? Where's the person that you said you were? And I don't mean like regular change, right? We evolve as humans, as we should. I'm not the same woman I was 5 years ago, right? I'm not, but I'm still the same person at my core. My values are still my own. That part hasn't changed. The good and the bad hasn't really changed, right? But we're talking about complete flip by the end of it. You don't even recognize the same person anymore. And that's the first thing to be careful for. If they seem too good to be true, they probably are. Second thing is, when you say no, how do they react? What do they do with that boundary? Do they say, okay, whoa, I didn't realize that you perceived it this way. I didn't realize this was having this impact on you. I will make sure this never happens again. That's the healthy response, right? If someone you care for, say, it doesn't matter, even if it's a best friend of yours or a close friend of yours, and you say, if they come to you and they say, when you say this, it makes me question my worth and it makes me feel like I'm not good enough to be your friend, or it just makes me feel insecure about who I am as a person in this element. Would you ever do that to them again? Never. Like, that's not something extraordinary to ask for. Usually with normal people, when someone you care for says, this hurts me, you make sure you don't do that to them ever again. It doesn't matter what you think about it. You just want to make sure you don't have that impact on them ever again. However, with a narcissist, when you say the same thing, when you make this comment, it makes me second guess my worth. It makes me question where I stand. And it kind of brings out insecurities that I didn't know I had and I don't like the feeling of, and I don't want to have. They take that, and instead of being like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for that to happen. It's, oh, I didn't mean it that way. I didn't really say that. Well, if you wouldn't have said this, then I wouldn't. Do you see why I said that in relation to what you just said? Or it becomes the character attack. Why are you taking things so seriously? Are you trying to start a fight with me right now? Is it a pride thing? Like all of these, and then you become in a position where, we call this gaslighting, but it looks like you're defending yourself for not being this person that they're painting you out to be, when they're the ones that said something to hurt you in the first place. The focus is then off of what they did and their behavior, and you're running around in circles trying to prove to them that that's not who you are, that you are not sensitive, that you're not trying to pick a fight, that you're not, it's not a pride thing. You're not prideful. You know, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Wow.
So, you know, it's whenever you feel like you're even just looking at me right now, right? Like, I just like, what's happening? Kind of that frenzied, frazzled of I'm over here trying to tell you how I feel. And then now I'm apologizing for being this person. Boom. No, run, right? That's so hard to do because we become accustomed to defending, right? To proving our stance, to explaining, for teaching, for all of these things, right? Like, no, let me, no. But when you catch yourself doing that after you've set a boundary, you've already stepped into something murky right there, and it's just better to run. That's another one. With covert narcissists, they always present as being very, they put themselves down. Like, I'm lucky to have you. I'm so lucky to find someone like you. I never thought I would have anybody like you. You know, or, I mean, I want to go for it, but I don't know if I can. And then so you become their greatest supporter, right? Because we always want to give love to someone who needs it, who doesn't believe that they do. So they present themselves as like a duckling, right? Like a lost duckling. And you're like, no, I will love you and I will support you and I will take care of you. And we get into a habit of being responsible for them, their feelings, their emotions, their source of strength, all of that. So when you're giving all of that to build them up, you're giving them all of that power. So then when they have that, and then they start saying things like, you know, you used to not be this way. You used to be way more loving. Then you're like, I mean, I am still loving. What do you mean? Right? Do you see then? Then they become the powerful one, and then they start chipping that power away from you. And that's just so hard to see coming, let alone when you're in it.
They start using your vulnerabilities against you.
Yep.
And you think that why somebody who professes that they love me, why would they be doing this to me? So I have to accept it because they say they love me.
Right. And by that point, you've already started believing, because if you think about it, if they call it love bombing, right? Where they're everything you could have ever wanted to be. So they've professed their love in such a way that you are so certain of the value they see in you. And when they slowly start taking that value away, subconsciously, you're already primed to give it away. Because all of the guard is down, all of the love is there. Everything is just open and bare for them. So when they start taking, it's not something that we willingly give away. It's not something we chose to do. Like I said, one day you look back and you're like, what happened?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how do we identify our own truths?
So this is perhaps the hardest thing to do. And it's not as simple as giving you, do this, do this, do this. And one of the freebies that I have, I do lay that out. This is how you would go about doing it. But identifying issues, we can't set a boundary if we don't know what we're defending. Does that make sense? A boundary is a protection. A boundary is not to keep them away, which a narcissist will say, why are you doing this to me? And it's not, when we set a boundary, it's not, we're not doing it to anyone. We're not doing anything to someone else. That's manipulation. That's so that you won't put that boundary up. A boundary is a barrier to protect yourself, to protect your heart. So no one has the right to challenge your boundary because it's not about them. And we can't set a boundary if we don't know what values we're trying to protect. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so in finding your truth, you have to know what your values are. You have to know what you stand for. You have to know what you believe in. Why do you believe in this? Where did that come from? Why is this a need of yours? And once you have the answers to those questions, then you can say, I would appreciate it if I was spoken to with respect. And this doesn't sound very respectful. And then you meet that with a consequence. If this continues, I will hang up the phone or I will walk out the door, and we can pick this up later when it's a little bit more calm and when there's a little bit more respect in the room. Now we have to be very careful with this one, because then the character attacks will start again, right? Like I said at the very beginning, set a boundary and see how it goes. A healthy person, I don't even want to say normal because it's normal, there's no such thing. But a healthy person would be like, you know what, you're right. Things are getting heated. You're right. Okay. 30 minutes, we'll be back. Or maybe just tomorrow. Or I don't want to sleep on it. Can we finish this in an hour or so? Just whenever you feel like there is a timeline, right? There's an end to this. But a narcissist will be like, see, look at you running away from the problem again. You're just walking out when it feels right for you. And you're like, and then you go back into that whole defending thing until you let that boundary go. So in knowing your truth, you can say, no, respect is very important to me. I'm making sure I give you the respect. I don't feel like I'm getting the same back. So we will talk to you later. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Very easily said than done. Don't get me wrong. I don't presume to say that this was easy. It wasn't. It hasn't been. It's not. But that's kind of the focus. We really have to be very, very factual in knowing our truth. Like, what are the facts? This is what I need, and this is why. Nobody else gets to define my truth for me. Nobody else gets to define my experience for me. Nobody gets to define anything, right? And we have to recognize in being secure in your truth that you have facts to back it up. Because a narcissist, they will believe whatever they believe. Can you still hear me? Okay. So that's why it's very important that you are able to say, I'm going to do this, and this is why. And I need this to be respectful. What I don't feel is being respectful is the tone of voice, the language that's used, or the character attacks. Because they're going to discount everything you're saying anyways. And so you just have to be firm in that. But until you know your truth, you can't be firm in setting those boundaries.
What would be something that you would suggest to somebody who wants to be firm with their boundaries, but they're afraid to speak up or say, I don't feel like I'm being respected right now?
I think first and foremost, you have to honor the fact that what you're feeling is true. It's real. The fear, the anxiety is there because of the consequences you've had whenever you have tried to set a boundary. Your brain has already been rewired to believe that if I say no, I'm a bad person. I'm a bad wife. I'm a bad girlfriend. I'm a bad friend. I'm a bad mother. You name it, right? You've already been conditioned over the slow process so that now when you try to, instinctively, your body's like, no, this is going to end badly, right? So it is important to challenge your beliefs, but you can't challenge your beliefs. You can't challenge your beliefs until you first say, it makes sense that I feel this way. There's a reason why I'm anxious right now. And then challenge it with why you're doing it. Because if it's, I'm going to feel motivated to go ahead and set a boundary, honey, that's not happening. That day is not coming, right? Because of the subconscious consequences that we know is coming, whether that's passive aggressiveness. Are they going to act like you don't exist for the next 3 days? Are they going to withhold love? Are they going to stonewall you? Are they going to actually do a consequence, right? Like sometimes it's yelling, sometimes it's horrible. It is abusive, right? In other ways that are more blatantly in your face abuse rather than the abuse that happens that's kind of like underneath the surface. And so acknowledge it, know that it's there, and then ask yourself, okay, why do I need to set this boundary? Remind yourself, no, I'm going to set this boundary because that's ultimately not okay. Or you know what, maybe I am worth it. And slowly start believing in yourself enough to set that boundary. Or maybe you're doing it for someone else. Maybe there are children involved. Maybe you start setting boundaries because you don't want your children growing up thinking that that's what love is, that that's what a relationship is, that that's what communication is, that that's what partnership is. You know, for a lot of people, that is enough of a motivation. If we won't defend ourselves, we're going to defend those babies.
Exactly. So what are give our viewers some examples of some boundaries that they should look to setting?
I'm going to give you examples based on what my values are. So respect was a big one. Respecting, honestly, sometimes it was my intelligence. Like, you know that I know that you know that I know this is happening. Can we not play this game anymore? So for me, like, I had to really hone in on these are the facts of what's happening. I need you to own it. And if you can't, that's okay. Here's a calendar that shows that this is what happened on this date, and here are facts, right? Whenever it comes to our integrity, and everybody defines that integrity differently, right? And for me, that was it. Like, you can't keep dismissing what I'm seeing. This is not my perception. This is reality, right? So I had to reinforce that, because remember, I spent a long time, or people in these relationships, they spend such a long time questioning their own sanity of what they see and the truth behind what they're seeing and perceiving, that's the first one to reclaim your power back from. Like, nope, my facts are facts. Yours is a perception, mine is a fact. This is my truth because it is actual truth. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Respect is another one. We all deserve respect. Everyone deserves respect. An easy, again, in theory, right? But an easy boundary to set is that was unnecessary and hurtful. And that's it. You just throw that sentence out, that phrase every 5 minutes. You know, in the middle of this conversation, anyone who's been in an argument with a narcissist knows how easy and how fast you get those character attacks. It's not a behavior that you did, it's who you are as a person that they tear apart. And so bringing it back, that was an unnecessary criticism. That was hurtful. I don't see how that's relevant to this conversation right now. And by holding on to these kind of phrases, you can keep your bearings, or try to. We want to fight back the way they're fighting once we've had enough. And all that does is spiral, because then they have ammunition saying, well, you did that to me too. And they negate your perspective.
Yes. I find I tell my clients a lot, setting ground rules for fights or arguments, I should say.
Yes.
You know, I agree not to do this. You need to agree not to do this. You can't bring up things from the past. It has to stay relevant, whatever those rules are going to be for you.
Right.
Yes.
Another one that I think is important to focus on when it comes to boundary setting would be triangulation. Something that any abuser will do is isolate you. It's everyone else against you. So it'll be, you know, they say things to friends, they'll say things to the children, they play unfair, very dirty, or go to your parents. And then it seems like it's them against you and your perspective. And that triangulation in any relationship is not okay. You know, even in regular parenting, good cop, bad cop, I don't believe in that at all, because then it's one good guy and one bad guy. And it's annoying being the bad guy all the time. But, you know, in any partnership, right, we're supposed to be equals. The love is supposed to be there. That strength and solidarity is the foundation. And in these relationships, that's not there. It's always, well, my mother thinks this, or your mother's not going to do that, or your father will never accept this. You will not be supported, right? Where you feel completely isolated from people. So you feel like you don't have a backbone. to fight for yourself because there's going to be no support system behind you. And by this point, you don't even believe in your ability to be able to defend and protect and survive without them anyways. Doesn't matter how strong of a human being you were when this started. By the end of it, I don't know anyone who's looked at their lives and felt like, oh yeah, definitely, I'm so strong now. You know, everything's been stripped from you and you don't even know how or when or why. And so bringing that conversation back to be like, they may not, and this is still not okay with me, right? Being firm in this is not okay with me. And you're right, they may not. And you're right, they may be upset. Or you're right, they may be confused. But I still need to do this for me. So these one word or one phrase kind of stances, I have my clients write them out. Like, how are we going to write these boundaries? We have like a notebook full of boundaries in itself, or what's good for them and what they need in their lives for the moment, but then also what's reflective of their truth, right? Of what their values are. And so it becomes this habit. It's annoying, but it's still like, no, that's it. They could, and I still need this to happen for me. When you respond to a narcissist with no emotion, they don't know what to do with that because it's your emotion, your confusion, your fear, your anger, like mine. That's what fuels them, right? Because it makes you look crazy. And then they're like, well, see, you're the one that's losing your temper. Like, what are you doing? You're the one crying in a corner. What is your problem? We're just having a conversation. Right? And all of these things that just really mess with your head.
They really do. And when you're stuck in it and experiencing it, you like trying to see the forest through the trees. You know, you don't at the time don't realize that's what's going on, and have to say, okay, wait, stop. Let's take a breath. You're just so embroiled in it. It's hard to take that step back.
Right. And typically, to everyone else, they're this amazing human being. They're so kind and they're so gentle and they're so funny and they're so charming and they're so accomplished. So when you try to tell someone, hey, you know, this is kind of like the subtle abusive things that I've been dealing with, they're like, what do you mean? Really? So unknowingly, they're also adding to that second guessing of your perspective because they're like, oh, I would have never imagined. Are you sure? So
yes,
that's another boundary.
Shaking my head at everything because yes.
It's so hard. It's so hard. And then again, with people that love you and that you love, that is something that you can ask for. Like, I understand that that's not what you see, but it is still what I'm experiencing. I would love your support. It's hard to say that. It's hard to ask for that. But typically a healthy, normal person would be like, I'm sorry, I'm not discounting your experience whatsoever. I'm just confused myself. That's not how I meant it, but you're right. I'll keep my own opinions to myself and I'm here to support you. We have to ask for what we need.
Which is being in that and recovering from that is, like you said, the hardest part is please help. It's so hard to ask for help.
Well, because by that point, right, you've had this long courtship, right, where everything that you've told everyone in your life how wonderful they are. And then to go back and say, actually, no, I was wrong. And look at all these things are happening. It's not just recognizing it for yourself, but then also what that means for you, right? Is this just another relationship where it's dysfunctional again, right? Do I really want to face that here I am in another dysfunctional relationship? Or do I want to face that I was duped? Do I want to face, oh my God, no, I had children with this person. What am I going to do about that now? What does that mean for me? Does that make sense? All of those truths are just so hard to face. It's so multifaceted, right? This trap that you're in. So
sometimes I think people don't realize just how all-encompassing the trauma is, and it touches every fiber of your life.
Yeah.
You know, you don't realize that you know, it's the symptoms of are like, you know, showing up late for work every day or not trying your best because, oh, you know, doesn't matter anyway, because no matter how hard I tried, it's not good enough. It's, all those little things you don't even realize that you're doing
Right.
in everyday life that come from the trauma, from the mental and
Right.
physical, emotional abuse. Yeah.
And it's draining. There's nothing left of you by the end of it. Just, you look in the mirror and you don't even recognize the person anymore. So it is, I
Totally
believe,
relate.
this kind of abuse to endure and to get out of, I think is one of the most courageous acts a person can take, because it's not blatant. In any kind of abusive relationship where it's physical, right? Where it's overt and it's in your face, and people will be like, yeah, that's not cool. That's not okay. That's justified somehow. But it's very hard to find that justification when it's so gray. It's not black and white.
Yes.
It's so gray. They just walk that fine line. They're like on the fence of that gray. They're really good at it too.
Yes. Very, very good. So well said. So well said. So Habiba, tell us about your free gift for our listeners today.
Yes. So I have 2 links. One for, it's called the ID Me quiz. It's a quiz that I came up with for my clients initially. And it's 10 questions, very simple, but it kind of puts you in, it categorizes the way you answer based on where you are in self-acceptance. It's not meant for judgment. It's just that this is where you are. And then okay, where am I going to go with this? Right? It's based on your attachment styles, how you attach based on your need for pleasing or your need to become somebody versus being secure and true with who you are. So that's one. My clients are like, well, we know who wrote these questions. I'm like, yeah. So it is challenging, but it is only 10 questions. So it kind of needs to be a little challenging, right? But it's a good start, I believe, in finding where you might want to start in rebuilding your identity. The second one is, now I may have gone a little bit overboard. It's 18 slides, but it does help label and identify what you're looking for in this covert narcissism kind of relationship, right? Especially if you're kind of wondering, maybe it is and maybe it's not, because it's not all the time, right? And I will say the same thing to you that I tell my clients, not that bad doesn't mean it's good either. So it outlines what covert narcissism is, what to look for, how to set those boundaries, what to set boundaries on. And then it also follows through with different techniques that we use for healing. It's called Stop the Spiraling Cheat Sheet. Because to me, it feels like, when you're in this moment of questioning where you are, and is this not, is it me, is it them? You start to spiral and second guess everything and just, in this whirlwind of, I don't know. And then we give up. Like, I don't know. I'm exhausted. I'm too tired to fight myself right now. And so I use 3 or 4 different techniques they're short, but you can kind of self-care and bring yourself back into a healthy state of being.
Love it. Thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts for our viewers?
Well, both of these links will be on my website, habibazaman.com. And my final thought would be, give yourself some grace. Give yourself the kind of love that you would give to another friend or a colleague or coworker or child that you meet that's already going through the same thing or has been through the same thing and is coming out the other end. Give yourself the support and love and grace that you would anybody else.
I love it. Thank you so much for being with us today, Habiba. Such great information. Thank you for your free gifts.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is such an important discussion that needs to happen.
Absolutely. Thank you for all the work you do.